Picture this in the quaint English village of St. Mildred's, where tea is always brewing and gossip flows like the river. An elderly spinster named Miss Jane Marple sips her chamomile one foggy morning, unaware that a chilling shadow is about to engulf her world, unraveling secrets buried for decades. Chapter 1. The Arrival in St. Mildred's. Shallow friends, and welcome to our thrilling journey through Miss Marple and the shadow over St. Mildred's. If you're a fan of cozy mysteries with a dash of suspense, you're in for a treat. Today we're diving into Chapter 1, where we set the scene in this sleepy village and introduce our beloved detective, Miss Jane Marple. We'll explore the charming yet eerie atmosphere of St. Mildred's, meet some key villagers, and hint at the darkness that's starting to creep in. By the end, you'll be hooked and ready for what's next. Let's get started. St. Mildred's was the kind of village that seemed frozen in time, nestled in the rolling hills of the English countryside. Picture narrow cobblestone streets lined with thatched cottages, their gardens bursting with roses and lavender in the summer months. The church steeple towered over everything, its bells chiming softly every hour, a reminder of the simple life that the residents cherished. But beneath that idyllic surface, like in so many small towns, secrets simmered quietly, waiting for the right moment to bubble over. It was here, in this peaceful haven, that Miss Jane Marple found herself one crisp autumn day, arriving not by choice, but by invitation from an old friend. Miss Marple, as you might know from her many adventures, was no ordinary elderly lady. With her fluffy white hair pinned neatly under a sensible hat, her knitting needles always at the ready, and her sharp blue eyes missing nothing. She had a knack for uncovering the truth in the most unexpected places. She wasn't a professional detective like those flashy ones in the cities know. She relied on her understanding of human nature, gleaned from years of observing the villagers in her own hometown of St. Mary Mead. People are the same everywhere, she often said with a gentle smile. Greed, love, jealousy, they wear different faces, but the hearts beat to the same rhythm. Her journey to St. Mildred's began with a letter postmarked from the village post office. It was from her dear friend, Dolly Bantry, who had recently moved there after her husband Arthur passed away. Dolly wrote in her usual dramatic fashion, "Jane, darling, you simply must come. The air here is divine, but there's something odd afoot. It's whispers in the tea shop, strange shadows at night. Oh, it's all very mysterious. Bring your knitting. We'll have such fun." Miss Marple chuckled as she read it on the train, her small suitcase at her feet containing little more than a few wool skeins, a book of crosswords, and her favorite shawl. Dolly always had a flair for exaggeration, but Miss Marple's instincts told her there might be more to it than met the eye. The train chugged into the tiny station just as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over the platform. Miss Marple stepped off, inhaling the fresh scent of wood smoke and damp earth. Waiting for her was Dolly herself, wrapped in a fur-trimmed coat, her face lighting up like a Christmas tree. "Jane, you made it. How was the trip? Not too bumpy, I hope?" Dolly enveloped her in a hug, chattering nonstop as they climbed into a waiting taxi, rare luxury in these parts. As they drove through the village, Dolly pointed out the sights. "That's the vicarage over there, home to Reverend Hargreaves. Such a kind soul, always organizing charity events. And here's the post office, run by Mrs. Pritchett. She knows everyone's business. Bless her. Oh, and the manor house on the hill belongs to Sir Reginald Thorne, the local squire. He's a bit of a recluse since his wife died last year." Miss Marple nodded politely, her eyes scanning the surroundings. The village green was empty save for a few children kicking a ball. The pub, the shadowed oak, glowed warmly with lantern light. But something felt off the way the curtains twitched in windows as they passed, or the hushed tones of two women gossiping by the bakery. They arrived at Dolly's cottage, a cozy affair with a thatched roof and a garden full of herbs. Over tea and scones by the fire, Dolly finally spilled the beans. "It's the shadow. Jane, they call it the shadow over St. Mildred's. Started about a month ago, people seeing a dark figure lurking near the old mill by the river. At first it was just stories, but then old Mr. Wilkins from the farm swore. He saw it, and the next day his prize cow was found dead. No explanation. And Mrs. Ellis at the school says her pupils are frightened, drawing pictures of a tall, hooded man. Miss Marple sipped her tea thoughtfully. Sounds like a prankster, perhaps, or someone with a grudge. But Dolly shook her head. It's more than that. Last week, the church bell rang at midnight, all by itself. Reverend Hargreaves, check no. One was there. And now, rumors of a curse from the old days, when St. Mildred's was a smuggling hub. They say a traitor was hanged at the mill, and his ghost walks when trouble brews. Miss Marple set down her cup. Ghosts, Dolly? No. Better than that. It's human mischief. Mark my words. Tell me more about the villagers. Who might benefit from scaring folks? Dolly leaned in, her eyes wide. Well, there's Sir Reginald. He's fighting to sell land for a new road, but the villagers oppose it. Then there's young Dr. Hayes, the new doctor. Handsome fellow, but secretive. And Miss Lavinia Croft, the schoolmistress, she's been acting odd, canceling classes for no reason. As Dolly prattled on, Miss Marple's mind whirred. She recalled a similar case in St. Mary Mead, where ghostly apparitions turned out to be a cover for theft. I'll take a stroll tomorrow, she said. Fresh air clears the head. The next morning dawned foggy, the mist clinging to the hedgerows. Like a veil, Miss Marple set out early, her stout shoes crunching on the gravel path. She wandered to the village green, where the bakery was just opening. Mrs. Baker, a plump woman with flour-dusted apron, greeted her warmly. You're Mrs. Bantry's friend? Heard you're quite the sleuth? Fancy a fresh bun? Or bites of warm pastry? Miss Marple gently probed. Tell me about this shadow everyone's whispering about. Mrs. Baker glanced around. It's bad for business, miss. Tourists stay away. Started after the harvest. Festival lights flickering. Doors banging. My husband. Saw it once, near the river. Tall as a tree, he said. Miss Marple thanked her and continued to the post office. Mrs. Pritchett, sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, was sorting mail. Ah, Miss Marple. Dolly mentioned you. What brings you to our little corner? Feigning casual interest, Miss Marple asked about recent millennia unusual packages. Mrs. Pritchett hesitated. Well, Sir Reginald gets letters from London solicitors often, and Dr. Hayes receives medical journals. Nothing odd. But Miss Croft. She's been sending telegrams lately, urgent ones. Intriguing, thought Miss Marple. Telegrams suggested haste, perhaps desperation. By midday she reached the old mill, the crumbling stone building by the rushing river. Ivy choked the walls, and the wheel creaked ominously in the breeze. As she approached, a figure emerged from the shadows, a young man in a tweed jacket carrying a doctor's bag. Good morning, he said, tipping his hat. Dr. Hayes at your service. You must be Miss Marple. His smile was charming, but his eyes darted nervously, exploring the sights. Mind the path, it's slippery. Miss Marple chatted amiably, mentioning the shadow rumors. Silly superstitions, he scoffed.
Owl, probably.
Foxes or owls. I've seen nothing amiss in my rounds. But as he left, Miss Marple noticed a muddy footprint near the mill door fresh, and matching the doctor's boots. She mused. Why would a doctor linger here? She poked around, finding a discarded cigarette butt, still warm. Someone had been watching. Shivering slightly, not from cold, but from the prickling sense of being observed, she headed back to the cottage. That afternoon, Dolly hosted a small tea party to introduce Miss Marple to the locals. The vicar, Reverend Hargreaves, arrived first, a kindly man with spectacles and a Bible tucked under his arm. Delighted to meet you, Miss Marple. Dolly says you're wise in the ways of the world. They discussed the church's history, including the old smuggling tales. Yes, in the 18th century, tunnels ran from the mill to the coast. Villagers hid contraband. A betrayer was executed, hanged from the mill beam. Legend says his shadow haunts those who disturb the past. Next came Miss Lavinia Croft, the schoolmistress, a stern woman in her 40s, with pinned-up hair and a no-nonsense air. Pleased to meet you, she said stiffly, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted a cup. Miss Marple noticed dark circles under her eyes. The children must be excited about autumn, she said lightly. Miss Croft nodded. Yes, but these rumors, they're drawing scary pictures. I had to send them home early yesterday. As the conversation flowed, Sir Reginald Thorne made a grand entrance, his cane tapping on the floor. A burly man in his 60s, with a mustache and booming voice, he dominated the room. "Miss Marple, heard you're a detective. Perhaps you can solve our little ghost problem." He laughed heartily, but his eyes were cold. "Over cucumber sandwiches." The group chatted about village life. Miss Marple steered the talk to the proposed road. "Progress is good, sir," Reginald said, "but these fools resist. The land's mine to sell." Reverend Hargreaves frowned. "It would destroy the old path, sir. History matters." Tension crackled, and Miss Croft excused herself early, claiming a headache. Dr. Hayes arrived late, apologizing for a house call. He seemed distracted, glancing at his watch. As the party wound down, Miss Marple reflected by the window. Connections were forming like threads in her knitting. The shadow sightings coincided with Sir Reginald's land deal push, Miss Croft's anxiety, Dr. Hayes's secrecy, the vicar's protectiveness, all pieces of a puzzle. That evening, as she and Dolly sat by the fire, a distant howl echoed, perhaps a dog, or something more sinister. "It's starting," Dolly whispered. Miss Marple patted her hand. "Fear not, dear. Tomorrow we'll dig deeper." And there you have it for Chapter 1, a gentle introduction to St. Mildred's and its inhabitants, with the mystery just beginning to unfold. We've met Miss Marple, seen the village's charm and its undercurrents, and gotten our first whiffs of suspicion. Stick around for Chapter 2, where things take a darker turn with a shocking discovery at the mill. You won't want to miss it. Chapter 2. The discovery at the mill, now that we've settled into St. Mildred's and glimpsed the unease beneath its charm. Let's dive into Chapter 2, where the mystery ramps up with a startling find at the old mill. Here, Miss Marple's quiet. Observations turn into active sleuthing as she uncovers evidence that suggests the shadow isn't just a rumor. We'll follow her through tense encounters, reveal more about the villagers' hidden agendas, and share tips on piecing together clues. Like a pro detective, expect vivid scenes, suspicious dialogues, and that cozy suspense that keeps you guessing. All building to a cliffhanger that pulls us deeper into the web. The morning after the tea party dawned brighter than the last, with sunlight filtering through the mist like fingers parting a curtain. Miss Marple rose early, her mind buzzing from the previous day's revelations. She decided to return to the mill, that crumbling sentinel by the river, where the shadow sightings seemed to originate. Armed with nothing but her wits and a small magnifying glass tucked in her handbag, she set out after a quick breakfast of porridge and tea. The path wound through meadows dotted with sheep, the air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves and damp soil. As she walked, she recalled similar spots in her past adventures, places where history and crime intertwined, like the overgrown ruins. Back in St. Mary Mead were a haunted, well-hid, stolen jewels. Arriving at the mill, Miss Marple paused to listen. The river gurgled steadily. Birds chirped overhead, but an unnatural silence hung over the building itself. The door, which she'd noted as scratched yesterday, now stood slightly ajar, creaking in the breeze. "Curious," she murmured, pushing it open with her umbrella tip to avoid fingerprints, a handy tip for any amateur investigator. Always preserve the scene if foul play is suspected. Inside, the air was musty, thick with dust and the faint odor of decay. Sunbeams slanted through cracked windows, illuminating scattered debris, old sacks, rusted tools, and what looked like fresh footprints in the dirt floor. She knelt carefully, her knees protesting a bit, and examined them through her glass. Larger than Dr. Hayes's from before, with a distinct tread, perhaps work boots, as she ventured deeper, toward the back where the smuggling tunnels were said. To begin, a glint caught her eye. There, half buried under a pile of rotten wood, was a small metal box, its lid pried open. Inside lay paper-zello documents, maps of the village with markings in red ink, and a few modern letters. One caught her attention, a solicitor's note to Sir Reginald Thorne, discussing the land sale and mentioning obstacles removed soon. Another was a handwritten scrawl, "Meet at mill midnight, payment for silence." Miss Marple's heart quickened. This wasn't ghostly. This was blackmail or worse. She pocketed a sample page discreetly evidence after Alan continued exploring. Suddenly, a noise echoed from below, a muffled thump, like something heavy falling, heart pounding. She found a trapdoor leading to the tunnels, its hinges oiled recently, no rust. Descending a few rickety steps, she shone her small torch, always carry one for dark corners. She'd advise and gasped. There, slumped against the wall, was a body old farmer Wilkins, his face pale, a nasty bruise on his temple. He groaned faintly, alive but barely. "Help," he whispered. Miss Marple acted swiftly. She propped him up, checked for broken bones, none apparent, and dashed outside to flag down a passing cart. "To the doctor, quick," she urged the driver, a young farmhand. As they rushed Wilkins to Dr. Hayes's clinic, Miss Marple pondered. Wilkins had seen the shadow, and now this attack. Coincidence? Unlikely. At the clinic, a modest building on the village edge with a sign reading E. Hayes. Chaos ensued. Dr. Hayes, looking disheveled as if he'd just woken, examined Wilkins promptly. Concussion, possible internal bleeding. He'll need rest and monitoring. Miss Marple watched closely as the doctor worked, noting his steady hands but evasive eyes. "What happened?" he asked her. She recounted the discovery, omitting the box for now. "Poor man must have slipped," Hayes suggested. But Miss Marple shook her head. "Slipped with that bruise? Looks like a blow from behind." Hayes frowned. "Implying assault?" "In St. Mildred's." She smiled mildly. "I'm implying nothing, doctor. Just observing." Word spread like wildfire. By lunchtime, Dolly's cottage buzzed with visitors. Reverend Hargreaves arrived first, Bible in hand. "Terrible news. I'll pray for Wilkins. Shadow curse." Double quotes, Miss Marple interrupted gently. "Or a culprit. Tell me, Reverend, have you noticed anyone near the mill lately?" He hesitated. "Well, Sir Reginald inspects his lands often. And Miss Croft walks there for inspirations. She's writing a village history." Interesting, thought Miss Marple. History could unearth old grudges. Miss Croft herself dropped by next, her face ashen. "I heard about Wilkins. Dreadful. The children are scared stiff?" Over tea, Miss Marple probed lightly. "You mentioned folklore lessons. Any tales of the mill's tunnels?" Croft nodded. "Smugglers used them to hide brandy and silk. The traitor was sealed in one, left to starve. His descendants might still hold grudges." Her voice wavered, and Miss Marple spotted ink stains on her fingers' recent writing. Tip for spotting lies. Inconsistent details, like claiming no visits but having muddy shoes. Sir Reginald stormed. And later, his face thunderous. "Wilkins attacked. On my property? This delays everything." He paced, cane thumping. "The land deal investors are impatient." Miss Marple raised an eyebrow. "Delays. How so?" He blustered. "Wilkins opposed the sale. Said it ruined farms, but assault? It's preposterous." Yet his knuckles whitened on the cane nerves or anger. As evening fell, Miss Marple revisited the mill with Dolly, who insisted on tagging along for moral support. The site was now cordoned off by the local constable, a bumbling fellow named Palk. "Miss Marple, heard you're helping. Found this?" He held up a glove leather, monogrammed E.H. Dr. Hayes's dropped in the scuffle, perhaps Palk said. Miss Marple examined it. "Fresh mud. Nowhere." "Planted," she advised Palk. "Check alibis thoroughly. And search for motives. Land, money, secrets. Back home over a supper of shepherd's pie." Dolly fretted. "Who could do this?" Miss Marple knitted thoughtfully. "Someone benefiting from fear." Wilkins was vocal against the road. Silencing him helped Sir Reginald. Perhaps it's tied to those tunnels' hidden treasures. She recalled a case where ghosts guarded buried loot. Tip: map connections. Draw a web of suspects and motives on paper to visualize. That night, unable to sleep, Miss Marple pored over the pilfered paper. The map showed tunnels linking the mill to Thorn Manor and the church, smuggling routes or escape paths. A noise outside jolted her shadow flitting past the window. She peered out, a cloaked figure vanishing into the fog. grabbing her shawl. She followed quietly, heart racing. Oh. The figure headed to the churchyard, meeting another silhouette. Whispers, "The box is gone. Find it before she does." Miss Marple strained but couldn't identify voices, one male, one female. Retreating undetected, she mulled it over. The she could be her or someone else. Next day, she confronted Dr. Hayes about the glove. "Lost it yesterday," he admitted. Sheepishly, was checking the mill for herbs' natural remedies. Plausible, but his blush suggested more. At the school, Miss Croft was absent. A note said ill suspicious. Reverend Hargreaves, when visited, showed her church records, entries on the traitor, a Thorn ancestor betrayed by a Hayes forebear. Family feud? Lunch at the pub brought gossip. Mrs. Pritchett claimed seeing Croft arguing with Wilkins days ago over money owed, I think. Post office secrets. Miss Marple chatted with patrons, learning Sir Reginald's debts were mounting land sale crucial. Tip, eavesdrop ethically. Pubs are gold mines for unguarded talk. Afternoon brought a breakthrough, searching the tunnels with Polk's permission. They found a hidden alcove with modern tools crowbar, flashlight and a notebook with entries. Scare tactics working. Wilkins. Out. Next, oppose road. Blackmail scheme? But whose? As they emerged, a shot rang out a warning. They ducked, unharmed. But the shadow had struck again. Wilkins, recovering, whispered to Miss Marple. Saw two figures ... arguing. One hooded, vague but progress. She connected dots. Hayes's glove, Croft's absences, Reginald's motives, Reverend's. Knowledge. Human nature, greed drives desperation. This chapter has escalated the stakes with the attack on Wilkins. Unearthed clues like the box and glove, and deepened suspicions on our cast. We've seen Miss Marple in action, using tips like preserving scenes and mapping motives that you could try in puzzles or even daily life. The plot thickens with alliances hinted at, setting up Chapter 3, where a midnight rendezvous reveals a surprising alliance and a deeper secret from the past. Chapter 3. Secrets in the moonlight building on the chilling attack at the mill and the web of clues starting to form.
Actor 3
Takes us into the shadows with a clandestine meeting that Miss Marple stumbles upon. We'll shadow her as she uncovers alliances among the villagers, delves into family histories that fueled the mystery, and gathers more evidence pointing to motives like greed and revenge. Through tense nighttime pursuits, revealing conversations, and clever deductions, we'll see how Miss Marple pieces things together, with practical tips on following hunches and reading between the lines. This amps up the suspense, showing how past sins cast long shadows, leads us toward an even bigger twist in the chapters ahead. The day following the mill incident was abuzz with village chatter, the kind that spreads faster than butter on hot toast. Miss Marple spent the morning at Dolly's cottage, her knitting needles clicking steadily as she reviewed her notes, mental ones. Of course, for she trusted her memory like an old friend. The glove with E. initials, the blackmail note in the box, the whispered meeting she'd overheard last night. It all pointed to secrets bubbling under St. Mildred's calm surface. We need to learn more about these family ties, she told. Dolly over a cup of chamomile. Past often explains the present, like roots feeding a tree. Dolly nodded, wide-eyed. Where do we start? Miss Marple smiled. The church records, dear. History doesn't lie. They headed to the vicarage, a neat brick house beside the church, where Reverend Hargreaves welcomed them with tea and biscuits. His study was lined with dusty bookshelves, the air smelling of old paper and polish. Miss Marple, Mrs. Bantrick, come in. He adjusted his spectacles, looking weary. Miss Marple got straight to the point. You mentioned the traitor's tale. May we see the parish registers? Births, deaths, perhaps smuggling mentions? He hesitated, but fetched a leather-bound volume from the 1700s as they pored over faded ink. Stories emerged. The traitor was Elias Thorne, Sir Reginald's ancestor, who betrayed smugglers for a reward but was drowned by his kin. A Hayes family member, Dr. Hayes's line, aided the betrayal, gaining land and Croft. Their forebears were smugglers ruined by it. Grudges last generations, Miss Marple murmured. Tip for unraveling mysteries, trace lineages. Old wounds motivate new crimes. Thanking the Reverend who seemed uneasy. Best not stir ghosts. They left. Outside, Miss Marple noticed fresh footprints near the churchyard gate, leading to the woods. Someone's been eavesdropping, she said. Dolly shivered. A shadow. Miss Marple shook her head. Human feet, dear. Let's follow discreetly. The trail wound through brambles to a clearing where they found a discarded cigarette, same brand. As Dr. Hayes's from the mill, coincidences pile up like leaves, Miss Marple noted. Practical advice. Collect small evidence. It builds cases like bricks in a wall. Lunch at the pub, the Whispering Willow, offered more insights. The room was cozy, with low beams and a roaring fire. Patrons nursing pints and pies. Mrs. Pritchett, the postmistress, was there. Gossiping with Mrs. Baker, Miss Marple joined them casually. Heard about Wilkins? Covering, thank goodness? Mrs. Pritchett leaned in. But I saw Miss Croft near the mill that night, arguing with someone hooded. Mrs. Baker added. And Sir Reginald's been sending urgent wires to London debts, they say. Over steak and kidney pudding, Miss Marple probed gently. Tip. In casual talks, ask open questions. People reveal more than they intend. Afternoon brought a visit to Wilkins at the clinic. The farmer, bandaged but alert, sat up. Miss Marple, you saved me. He described the attack. 2 figures, one tall, one shorter. Heard the map mentioned. Then whack. The map from the box. Miss Marple showed him the torn fabric she'd found. Looks like from Croft's coat she wears silk linings. Wilkins nodded. She owes me money, school supplies unpaid. Motive. As she left, Dr. Hayes pulled her aside. Found my glove. Odd place to lose it. His tone was light, but sweat beaded his brow. Herbs, you said? Miss Marple pressed. He fidgeted. Yes, ... In checking old tunnels for safety, liars tell. Avoiding eyes. Back at the cottage, Miss Marple examined the map snippet. Under better light, showed tunnels from mill to manor and church marked with X treasure. Smuggler's gold, perhaps. Dolly gasped. A fortune? Miss Marple cautioned. Or a red herring? Tonight, we watch. As dusk fell, fog rolled in again, blanketing the village in eerie quiet. Miss Marple donned her dark shawl camouflage for sleuthing and slipped out. Dolly staying behind with instructions to alert Constable Pauck if needed. She headed to the churchyard, where she'd seen the whispers before. Hiding behind a yew tree, its branches like bony fingers, she waited. The moon peeked through clouds, casting silvery light on gravestones. Soon, footsteps approached, 2 figures emerged. One in a hood, the other familiar. Miss Croft and Dr. Hayes. They met under an ancient oak. Did you get the map? Croft hissed, her voice tense. Hayes replied, part of it Wilkins interrupted. But Reginald suspects. Croft paced. We need the full thing. The gold's ours by right, my family lost. Everything because of his ancestor. Hayes sighed, and mine profited unfairly. But scaring the village? Attacking Wilkins? It's gone too far, Croft snapped. No choice. If Reginald sells the land, tunnels collapse, gold lost. The shadow guy's works blame the curse. Miss Marple's breath caught. An alliance. Croft and Hayes, descendants seeking restitution through deception. The shadow was them staged hauntings to halt the sale. Uncover treasure. But assault? Hayes seemed reluctant. She shifted for a better view, snapping a twig. They froze. Who's there? Hayes called, torch flashing. Miss Marple froze, heart thumping, but they dismissed it as wind and hurried off Croft to the school. Hayes to his clinic. Retreating carefully, Miss Marple pondered. Not full villains misguided justice? But who struck Wilkins? Perhaps a third party. Tip. Overheard talks clarify motives. Note tones for sincerity. At the cottage, she shared with Dolly. An unholy pact, but pieces missing. Dolly fretted. Dangerous, Miss Marple knitted. Knowledge is armor. Next morning, she confronted Miss Croft at the school, a red brick building with laughter echoing from classrooms. Croft was marking papers, startled. "Miss Marple."
Acts.
"What brings you?" feigning concern. Miss Marple mentioned Wilkins's debt. "Well, that'll pay soon." Then, casually, heard of tunnel treasures. Croft paled. Legends. But her trembling hand betrayed her. Tip. Bluff with partial truths. Reactions reveal lies. Sir Reginald next. At Thorn Manor, a grand house with manicured lawns. He received her in the library, books towering. Miss Marple, progress on this nonsense? She mentioned the map. His eyes narrowed. Family heirloom stolen. Shows old boundaries. Lie. He ranted about debts. Sale must happen. Motive to frame others. Reverend Hargreaves revisited, admitted knowing Croft's research. She borrowed records. Hayes to genealogy. All connected. Afternoon stroll to the mill with Polk yielded more. A hidden entrance. Fresh dirt. Inside another note. Midnight church final share. Tonight's plan. Evening dinner was tense. Shepherd's pie again, Miss Marple strategized. "We'll intercept," Dolly protested, but agreed. As midnight neared, they crept to the church, hiding in pews. Clock struck 12. Figures arrived, Croft, Hayes. "And Reverend Hargreaves, you!" Croft exclaimed. He nodded. "My family was smugglers to ruined. Found the full map and records." They argued shares. Miss Marple emerged. "Gentleman, lady, explain." Shock rippled. Hayes confessed. "We staged the shadow to scare opposition, dig tunnels secretly. But Wilkins's attack, not us. Someone else knows," Reverend added. "I rang bells as signals." Croft, tearful, for justice. But as they spoke, a crasher Reginald burst in, pistol waving. "Traitors, the gold's mine," admitted spying, striking Wilkins to steal the map. Struggle ensued. Polk, alerted by Dolly, arrived, disarming him. Chaos sorted. Arrests loomed, but Miss Marple intervened. Motives understood, but violence no. Revelations. Gold existed, but modest enough for reparations. Sir Reginald's debts from gambling. He'd faked more hauntings to rush sale. This chapter exposed the alliance of Croft. Hayes and Hargreaves driven by historical wrongs. And unmasked Sir Reginald's greed as the true villain behind the violence. We've seen Miss Marple's stealthy pursuits, key confrontations, and tips like tracing histories and bluffing for truths that anyone can use in solving puzzles. Yet loose ends remain. Who else lurks? This paves the way for Chapter 4, where a hidden tunnel yields a final shocking secret and the shadow's true origin. Chapter 4. Echoes from the depths with the midnight confrontation in the church exposing tangled alliances and Sir Reginald's desperate greed. Chapter 4 plunges us further into the underground secrets of St. Mildred's. Miss Marple, ever the patient unraveler, leads a daring exploration of the hidden tunnels, where a startling discovery reveals the shadow's authentic roots tied to long-buried betrayals and unexpected treasures. We'll track her step by step through dim passages, overhear confessions that shift suspicions, and pick up tips on navigating literal and figurative mazes and mysteries. The tension builds with close calls and revelations, showing how history's echoes can still whisper dangers today, seamlessly transitioning to even greater perils in the coming chapters. The morning after the churchyard showdown brought a semblance of calm to St. Mildred's, though the village hummed with rumors like bees in a hive. Constable Polk had taken Sir Reginald into custody for the assault on Wilkins and attempted threats, while Miss Croft, Dr. Hayes, and Reverend Hargreaves faced questioning over their staged hauntings. Miss Marple, however, knew the puzzle wasn't complete. The modest gold they'd uncovered in the church safe was merely coins and trinkets from smuggling days, enough to settle old debts, but not the fortune legends promised. "There's more below," she confided to Dolly over breakfast toast and marmalade. "The map shows deeper branches. The true shadow might lurk there." Dolly's eyes widened. "You mean explore the tunnels?" "It's risky." Miss Marple nodded. "Risk reveals truth, dear. Like untangling a knotted skein pulled gently." They rallied a small group, Polk for official muscle Dr. Hayes for medical aid under watch. Reverend Hargreaves, who knew the church. Entrance best. Miss Crofts stayed behind, too shaken but provided sketches from her research. The entrance was in the church crypt. A stone slab shifted aside to reveal steep stairs vanishing into darkness. Lanterns in hand, always pack extras for backups, Miss Marple advised. They descended. The air grew cool and damp, smelling of earth and mold, walls rough-hewn from centuries ago. How smugglers carved these 4 quick escapes, Reverend explained, voice echoing. Branches lead to the mill, manor, and beyond, perhaps the river. As they navigated, Miss Marple trailed her fingers along the walls, feeling for anomalies. Tip for exploring unknowns. Use all senses. Touch can find hidden levers where sight fails. Hayes led, map in hand, but his steps faltered at forks. This way, he said uncertainly. Pout grumbled. Hope no collapses. Dolly clutched Miss Marple's arm. Suddenly, a draft whispered from a side passage, carrying a faint metallic Thames. Wait, Miss Marple said. They veered off the main path, lanterns casting flickering shadows that danced like specters. Deeper in, the tunnel narrowed, forcing single file. Miss Marple spotted scratches on the floor, drag marks. Recent. Something heavy moved here. But Miss Marple knelt, examining the wall, a loose stone. Pushing it, a section swung open, a secret chamber. Inside, crates stacked high, dust-covered but one pried open. Gold glinted. Not coins, but ingots and jewels. The real smuggler's hoard, worth a king's ransom. By Jove, Poke exclaimed. Reverend gasped. Hidden all this time. But Miss Marple frowned. Look, footprints? Someone new. As they inspected, a voice echoed from the entrance. Don't touch that, Sir Reginald. No. He was locked up. Emerging from shadows was Mrs. Pritchett, the postmistress, wild-eyed, a shovel in hand. It's mine. My family were the true smugglers betrayed by Thorns and Hayes. I found clues in old letters. She confessed, posing as the shadow to search undisturbed. She'd attacked Wilkins when he caught her digging and framed the others. The hauntings? Amplified theirs with my own bells. Figures to divert suspicion. Hayes stared. Sent. Anonymous notes? She nodded. To panic Reginald into selling fast, collapsing tunnels, burying the gold for me alone. Chaos erupted as Pritchett swung the shovel. Poke dodged, lanterns smashing, plunging them into gloom. Miss Marple, quick thinking, used her torch always carry a spare light source. Mrs. Pritchett, think. Greed destroys. In the scuffle, Dolly tripped, but Hayes caught her. Reverend reasoned, forgiveness heals. Pritchett faltered, dropping. The tool poke cuffed her. You're nicked. Back above ground, sunlight blinded as they emerged with the hoard. Village gathered, gasps at the revelation. Pritchett's motive. Family letters in the post office revealed the betrayal. She'd plotted for years. Tip. Archives hold keys. Letters like words unsaid expose hearts. Wilkins, recovered, identified her voice from the attack. Sir Reginald, from jail, admitted knowing rumors, but not the gold's location his push for. Sale was pure debt relief. Over tea at the cottage, Miss Marple reflected. Human nature. Ancestral wrongs breed modern sins. Pritchett's shadow was vengeance cloaked in legend. Examples abounded, like a St. Mary Mead case where a postman hid. Thefts and haunted mail. Practical advice. Cross-check alibis with timelines. Pritchett's late-night sorting matched sightings. But as evening fell, a new note slipped under the door. The depths hold more. Miss Marple examined different handwriting. Not over, she said. Dolly paled. Another shadow? The chapter has delved into the tunnel's secrets, unmasking Mrs. Pritchett as the core perpetrator driven by familial revenge. While recovering the true treasure and tying loose ends from prior deceptions, through explorations, confrontations, and tips like sensory awareness and archival digs, we've seen Miss Marple's method shine, yet the ominous note hints at deeper layers, steering us into Chapter 5. where an outsider's arrival stirs fresh suspicions and revives the curse anew. Chapter 5. The Stranger from London, the morning after the tunnel adventure. St. Mildred's hummed with a fragile calm, like the quiet before a storm's second wave. The recovered hoard gold ingots, jewels, and relics was locked in the vicarage, safe, awaiting appraisal, while Mrs. Pritchett sat in the village lockup, her confessions tying up many threads of the shadow mystery. Yet the cryptic note Miss Marple had found, the depths hold more than gold, where the final shadow lingered. In her mind, an unfinished melody. Over breakfast at Dolly Bantry's cottage, where the aroma of fresh scones mingled with morning dew from an open window, she mused aloud. That note's handwriting was too refined, not village stock, someone from outside, perhaps with knowledge. Of our discoveries, Dolly, buttering a scone, frowned. But who? We've caught the culprits. Miss Marple's blue eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. Not all puzzles end with the first solution, dear. Like a good novel, there's often a sequel. A sharp knock interrupted. Constable Pock stood at the door, his uniform slightly crumpled from a sleepless night guarding prisoners. Miss Marple, a gentleman's arrived at the station, says. He's from London, asking about the hoard. Claims family ties to St. Mildred's. Bit pushy, if you ask me. Intrigued. Miss Marple gathered her shawl and handbag aways, equipped with a small notebook and pencil for jotting clues. A habit she'd recommend to any sleuth, headed to the village square with Dolly trailing eagerly. Practical tip. When meeting strangers, observe their hands and posture. Confidence or nerves betray intent before words do. The police station. A converted cottage with peeling paint and a creaky sign was barely big enough for its single cell. Inside, they met Mr. Lawrence Cavendish, a tall man in his 40s with slicked back dark hair, a tailored gray suit, and a polished London accent that screamed wealth. His smile was charming, but his dark eyes darted like a fox in a henhouse. Miss Marple, I presume, said, extending a manicured hand. I've heard of your reputation even in the city. I'm here on behalf of the Cavendish estate. My ancestors were tied to this village's colorful past. He claimed descent from a smuggler captain who worked alongside Elias Thorne, the traitor from the 1750s, and had come after reading of the hoard's discovery in a London newspaper. Snippet. Family records mention a share owed to us. I'd like to see the artifacts, verify their provenance. Miss Marple nodded politely, her sharp eyes noting his expensive cufflinks engraved with LC, matching the brass button she'd found by the river weeks ago. Coincidence? Unlikely, of course, Mr. Cavendish. But such claims need verifying. Tell me about these records. He waved a hand airily. Old journals, letters stored in our family vault in London. I can fetch copies if needed. His vagueness raised her suspicions. In her experience, those quick to claim often hid more than they revealed. Practical tip. When someone's story flows too smoothly, press for specific statals trip up liars. She suggested meeting later at the vicarage to inspect the hoard, and Cavendish agreed, heading to the Whispering Willow pub to refresh after his journey. As he left, Miss Marple whispered to Poke, check his arrival train tickets. Luggage. Tags, outsiders bring new threads to weave. Poke nodded, scurrying off. She and Dolly strolled to the vicarage, where Reverend Hargreaves was cataloguing the hoard in his cluttered study. The air thick with the scent of old books and wax polish. The treasures lay on a table, gold ingots gleaming like small sun's rubies, an emerald sparkling in the lamplight, a silver chalice etched with a ship likely a smuggler's mark. But a small iron box among the items caught Miss Marple's eye, its keyhole matching the ornate brass key she'd found in the tunnel. Reverend, any mention of a Cavendish family in your records? She asked. He adjusted his spectacles, frowning. Not directly, but smugglers often used aliases. Some captains went by initials like Elsie Isle, dig deeper into the parish logs. Lunch at the Whispering Willow offered a chance to gather village gossip. The pub was warm, its low beams hung with dried hops, the fire crackling as patrons savored roast beef and pints of ale. Mrs. Baker, serving steaming plates of shepherd's pie, leaned in. That Cavendish fellow was asking odd questions, wanted to know the tunnel's layout and who guards the hoard. Strange for a newcomer. Miss Marple chatted with other locals, learning Cavendish had arrived on the early train with a heavy suitcase and was seen sketching a map of the village green. Suspicious behavior for a supposed heir. She recalled a case in St. Mary Mead where a historian visitor turned out to be a fence for stolen antiques, using charm to mask theft. Practical tip: watch what newcomers ask their questions, reveal what they seek more than their words do. After lunch, Miss Marple visited the post office, now managed by Mrs. Baker's young niece, Clara, since Pritchett's arrest. Sorting letters behind the counter, Clara shared a bombshell. I found records of packages Mrs. Pritchett sent small. Heavy ones, to a Mr. L. Cavendish in London, weeks before the shadow rumors started. Marked fragile, confidential. Miss Marple's mind raced. Had Pritchett been in league with this stranger? She re-examined the cryptic note from the cottage. Its elegant looping script matched the signature Cavendish had scrawled on Polk's visitor log. He's no innocent bystander, she murmured to Dolly. Practical tip: cross-check paper trails, letters, receipts, or signatures can tie distant players to local crimes. At the afternoon meeting in the vicarage, Cavendish arrived with a folder of family documents, yellowed pages claiming his ancestors' stake in the smuggler's hoard. He spun a tale of a great-great-grandfather who captained ships alongside Elias Thorne, entitled to half the treasure but cheated by betrayal. But Miss Marple, peering through her spectacles, spotted flaws. Dates in the letters mismatched known. Smuggling timelines by a decade, and the paper felt too crisp, lacking the brittleness of true age. Mr. Cavendish, these documents seem ... recently crafted, perhaps forged. His face flushed and he blustered, nonsense. Family keepsakes, carefully preserved. Reverend Hargreaves, flipping through his parish records, confirmed no Cavendish name appeared in births, deaths, or marriages. Cavendish's polished charm cracked, his hand twitching toward his coat Paquita. Nervous tell. Sensing rising tension, Miss Marple suggested a walk to the mill to discuss further, hoping to draw him out in a less confined space. The group Cavendish, Puck, Dolly, and herself strolled along the river path, the water glinting under late afternoon sun. She probed gently. You knew Mrs. Pritchett, didn't you? Packages to London, perhaps? Cavendish denied it, his voice sharp. Never met the woman. But a stutter betrayed him, and his eyes flicked to the riverbank. There Miss Marple spotted another clue, a cigarette butt. It's the same acrid brand as Pritchett's, near fresh footprints too large for her small boots. You've been here before, she said calmly, stooping to pick it up. Cavendish's composure shattered. Enough of your meddling, old woman. He pulled a small pocket knife, its blade glinting. But Polk, who trailed discreetly at Miss Marple's signal, was ready. Drop it, sir, he barked, lunging to disarm Cavendish with a swift grab. The knife clattered to the stones, and Cavendish sagged, caught. Under Polk's stern questioning, he confessed he was no true heir, but a London antiques dealer who'd bought secrets from Pritchett maps and details of the hoard gleaned from her family's old letters for a promised cut. She sent me tunnel sketches, said we'd split the gold if I helped scare the village into selling land cheap. Collapsing tunnels would hide the hoard forever, letting us retrieve it later. I posed as a descendant to claim it legally, planted that LC button to muddy the waters. The cryptic note was his, slipped under the cottage door to warn Miss Marple off. Pritchett turned greedy, wanted it all for herself. He spat. Thought she could outsmart me. Ack. Polk marched Cavendish to the station, locking him beside Pritchett's cell. Back at the cottage, Miss Marple pieced it together. For Dolly over tea, Pritchett used Cavendish to amplify her local schemes, sending him clues to secure an outside ally. But he planned to double-cross her using forged papers to claim the hoard legally. Greed breeds betrayal, just as in Elias Thorne's day. Practical tip: cross-reference stories for inconsistencies. Cavendish's fake documents unraveled under scrutiny, much like a poorly spun yarn. Wilkins, visiting to thank her, recalled seeing a city man with Pritchett near the mill weeks ago, arguing over shares. Reverend Hargreaves found a journal entry linking Pritchett's family to an alias, Captain Elsie, explaining her trust in Cavendish. As evening fell, Miss Marple sat by the fire, knitting a scarf and reflecting. Greed weaves a tight net. Dolly, but truth cuts through like a sharp needle. The hoard, now designated village property, would fund repairs new schoolbooks, church roof, farm tools. But as Dolly locked the cottage door, a distant church bell tolled once, unprompted, sending a shiver through the room. Miss Marple frowned. One last shadow, perhaps. Moments later, a telegram arrived from Scotland Yard, delivered by Clara. Similar thefts reported in coastal towns. Cavendish part of syndicate. Mystery stretched beyond St. Mildred's. Hinting at a larger web, this chapter has unveiled Lawrence Cavendish as a cunning outsider whose arrival tied Pritchett's local deceptions to a broader criminal network, showing how the shadow's roots blend ancestral grudges with modern greed. Through Miss Marple's keen observations, tense confrontations, and practical tips like reading tells in strangers or verifying documents, we've watched the plot expand. The eerie bell and ominous telegram set the stage for Chapter 6, where opening the hoard's locked box reveals chilling connection to the present and a new threat lurking closer than anyone expects. Chapter 6. The locked box and the final shadow. The morning sun filtered through Dolly Bantry's lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the breakfast table where Miss Jane Marple sipped her tea, her knitting needles resting beside her. St. Mildred's was still abuzz with the arrests of Mrs. Pritchett and Lawrence Cavendish, their schemes to exploit the smuggler's hoard now exposed. Yet the ominous telegram from Scotland Yard, similar thefts in coastal towns. Cavendish. Syndicate. And the cryptic note about a final shadow kept Miss Marple's mind spinning. She eyed the brass key from the tunnels, its tag-reading depths, which fit the iron box from the hoard. "That box holds answers," she told Dolly, who was slicing crusty bread. "And possibly dangers. You must open it carefully, like unraveling a fragile thread." Dolly set down her knife, eyes wide. "Jane, after Pritchett and Cavendish, can't we leave it be?" Miss Marple shook her head gently. "Loose ends are like dropped stitches, dear. I'll ignore them, and the whole pattern unravels." She decided to visit the vicarage, where the hoard was stored, to unlock the box with Reverend Hargreaves's help. Constable Pauck was called for security, and Dr. Edmund Hayes, still under supervision but cooperative, offered to join, citing interest in historical artifacts. Practical tip: involve specialists in investigations, clergy for records, doctors for forensics, but always watch their motives. At the vicarage, Reverend Hargreaves had cleared a table in his book-lined study. The hoard's treasures, gold ingots, glittering jewels, a silver chalice covered with a cloth for protection. The iron box, small but heavy, bore engravings of ships and waves, its keyhole beckoning the brass key. Miss Marple inserted it, the lock clicking smoothly. The lid creaked open, revealing a bundle, parchment letters, a small journal, and a sealed envelope marked for the betrayer's heir. The group leaned in. Elias Thorne's legacy. Hargreaves wondered. Miss Marple unfolded the journal, its pages brittle, written in a tight 1750 script by Lavinia Thorne, Elias's lover. "Elias betrayed us for gold, but I betrayed him for love," it read. "Sealed him in the tunnel to protect our secrets, but cursed our lines forever." A passage described a pact. Lavinia hid part of the hoard, vowing only a true heir could claim it or face the shadow's wrath. A map showed a hidden chamber beneath the church. The sealed envelope, modern paper, held a typed note. "The curse lives. The final shadow watches. Cease or perish." Its script matched the cottage note, but colder. Tip: hidden messages hide in context-check dates, materials to spot threats. The find chilled the room. Pauck scratched his head. Another prank. Miss Marple disagreed. "This is personal. Someone knows we're close." She recalled a St. Mary Mead case where threatening letters hid a local's vendetta. They followed the map to the church undercroft. Behind a false panel opened by pressing a carved angel's wing, smugglers loved clever hides, Hargreaves noted. Down narrow steps, the air grew damp, metallic. Lanterns cast shadows like specters. The chamber held broken pottery, animal bones, and a stone chest with a ship carving. Inside, Gold coins, a sapphire-encrusted dagger, a locket matching Ilias's, inscribed Lavinia to Elias. But a modern photograph shocked them, the village green. Miss Marple circled in red, a cross over her face. Dolly gasped. You're in danger, Miss Marple stayed calm. Fear is their weapon. We counter with clarity. Tip. In threats, composure sharpens judgment. The church bell tolled once midday, unprompted. Hargreaves paled. Not again. Outside villagers gathered, Mrs. Baker muttering, "The curse!" Miss Marple hushed them. No curse. Only human hands. Clara, the temporary postmistress, reported a cloaked figure posting a letter near the church last night. Retrieved. It read, "Leave St. Mildred's, or the shadow claims you." Same. Script. Miss Marple confronted Pritchett and Cavendish at the lockup. Pritchett denied threats, "I'm caught, way bother." Cavendish, nervous, slipped, "My London contact's not happy. Job's undone." Pressed, he named Victor Grayson, an antiquities dealer tied to coastal thefts. He funded Pritchett, expected the hoard. Grayson the final shadow. At the pub over Shepherd's Pie, Wilkins recalled a city man with Pritchett weeks ago, cold as ice. Mrs. Baker overheard Pritchett arguing with a Victor on the phone. Tip. Sift gossip for patterns. Discard embellishments. At the school, Miss Croft, helping poke, found a ledger. Grayson's family. Exiled smugglers vowed revenge post-Elias. A modern Grayson could be settling scores. Dusk patrol on the green with Pock spotted a man in a dark coat, vanishing into woods. He dropped a card. VG Antiquities, London. Proof. Over supper soup and bread. Miss Marple told Dolly. Grayson's the puppet master, using Pritchett and Cavendish. Threats aimed to stop us exposing his syndicate. Wired Scotland Yard about Grayson, planning a public hoard unveiling to lure him. That night, a shadow circled the cottage, leaving a sapphire dagger pinned to the door with a note. Last warning. Miss Marple's resolve hardened. He's desperate. We're close. This chapter has opened the hoard's box, revealing Lavinia's curse and Victor Grayson's syndicate, tying the shadow to a modern criminal plot. Through sleuthing, confrontations, and tips like decoding messages, the mystery expands. The dagger and cards signal a looming showdown, leading to Chapter 7, where the unveiling draws the mastermind, risking all. Chapter 7. The Unveiling Trap. The morning after the sapphire dagger was found pinned to Dolly Bantry's cottage door, St. Mildred's felt like a village holding its breath. The air was crisp, the church bells silent for once, but the weight of the final shadow mentioned in the threatening note hung heavy. Miss Jane Marple, sipping tea by the cottage window, studied the dagger in its note. Last warning with calm determination. "Victor Grayson's close," she told Dolly, who was nervously buttering toast. "He's watching, waiting for us to falter. We'll draw him out with a spectacle he can't resist." Dolly's eyes widened. "Show off the hoard?" "Jane, that's dangerous." Miss Marple's lips twitched into a smile. "Danger, dear, is the bait for truth. Like a good stitch, it must be placed just right." Her plan was bold. A public unveiling of the smuggler's hoard in the village hall, framed as a celebration of St. Mildred's history to fund community projects, school repairs, farm aid, church restoration.
Ow.
The event would lure Grayson, an antiquities dealer, into action. She enlisted Constable Pauck to spread the word and secure the hall, Reverend Hargreaves to host, and Dr. Edmund Hayes for crowd control, his remorse now genuine. Miss Lavinia Croft, eager to atone, prepared historical notes to add authenticity. Practical tip when setting a trap. Make the bait irresistible, but control the environment. Know every exit and ally. By midday, the village buzzed with activity. The hall, with its oak beams and stained glass windows, was adorned with bunting. Tables set for the hoards, display gold ingots, jewels, the silver chalice, and sapphire dagger under glass cases. Polk's deputy, Tom, stood guard. Miss Marple inspected, noting sightlines. "Lock the back exit," she told Pauck. "Watch for anyone too curious about the cases." She recalled a St. Mary meat auction where a thief was caught lingering. Tip: in crowds, Watch outliers, those who stand apart or focus too intently. Notices went up at the pub, bakery, and post office. Mrs. Agnes Baker, serving tea, told patrons, "Come see the treasure. Miss Marple's sorted it." Clara, managing. The post office reported no suspicious mail, but noted a telegram sent to VG in London, likely Grayson. Miss Marple visited Farmer Wilkins, now mobile, who offered to watch for strangers. "I owe you, miss," he said. "I'll spot any city types." At dusk, the hall filled with villagers, farmers, children, elderly gossipers chattering with awe and fear. Reverend Hargreaves opened. "This hoard, once strife, now unites us." Croft spoke of smuggling history. The chalice and dagger symbolized loyalty, betrayed by Elias Thorne, redeemed today. Miss Marple, near the front, scanned faces. Mrs. Baker, Wilkins, but also a man in a dark coat, hat low, and a scarf-wrapped woman by the side door. Dip, note. Who avoids eye contact or seeks exits, they have plans. Hayes signaled. The man in the coat neared the cases. Miss Marple whispered to Pock, "Watch, don't act yet." She took the stage, voice gentle but firm. "This hoard belongs to St. Mildred's. It's past, good and ill. Let those who seek to steal know. Truth surfaces." "What?" the crowd murmured. The man froze, then slipped toward the back. Suddenly a smoke bomb hissed, gray clouds billowing. Villagers coughed, panicking. Shouted, "Stay calm!" The man smashed a case with a hammer. But Miss Marple had swapped real treasures for replicas. Protect valuables with misdirection. Poke and Tom tackled him. Victor Grayson, face twisted. "You'll pay." He snarled, cuffed. The scarf-wrapped woman fled through the side door. Miss Marple, coughing, spotted a sapphire earring outside matching the dagger. She and Dolly followed to the churchyard, finding Clara by Elias's grave. "I didn't mean harm," Clara sobbed. "Victor forced me, threatened my family." She'd sent telegrams, planted the photo and dagger to scare Miss Marple. Grayson, questioned, admitted running a syndicate targeting historical sites using Pritchett and Cavendish as pawns. "The hoard was a prize, but you ruined it," Miss Marple smiled. "Greed betrays itself." Villagers cleaned the hall, the real hoard safe. Over tea, Miss Marple explained. Grayson used Pritchett's knowledge, Cavendish's charm, Clara's access. The shadow fed on fear of the past. Tip: trace conspiracies, chains pawns lead to kings. Reverend found Clara's family tied to thorns, blackmailed by Grayson. But a midnight bell tolled once, and a letter in Clara's belongings. Read, if caught, the final air axe. Who? This chapter unmasks Grayson and Clara, tying the shadow to a syndicate rooted in smuggling grudges. Through traps, showdowns, and tips like crowd watching, the net closes. The final air hint leads to Chapter 8, where a locket's hidden document reveals a betrayal close to home. Chapter 8. The locket's hidden truth, the morning after the chaotic hoard unveiling. St. Mildred stirred with a fragile calm, the village hall still faintly smoky from Victor Grayson's failed theft. Grayson and Clara, his reluctant accomplice, were locked away with Mrs. Pritchett and Lawrence Cavendish, their syndicate's web of greed exposed. Yet the cryptic letter in Clara's belongings, if caught, the final air axe, nagged at Miss Jane Marple like a stubborn knot in her knitting. Over breakfast at Dolly Bantry's cottage, where fresh muffins scented the air, she studied the twin lockets from the hoard, one from Elias Thorne's grave, one from the church chamber. "These hold more than sentiment," she told Dolly, tapping the locket with Lavinia Thorne's portrait. "There's a secret here, personal and close." Dolly, pouring tea, shivered. "Jane, for culprits caught, haven't we had enough?" Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. "The past isn't done, dear. One last pull reveals the pattern." Determined, Miss Marple visited the vicarage, where Reverend Thomas Hargreaves sorted parish records. The church locket lay on his desk, silver, tarnished but intact. Her deft fingers found a hidden compartment, a tiny folded paper. Unfurling it, she read Lavinia Thorne's 1756 letter, "To my child, hidden for safety. Elias's betrayal cost us, but you are the true heir. Seek the shadow's heart beneath the willow." A secret child. This changes everything, Miss Marple said. Practical tip: Check keepsakes for hidden compartments. Lockets or boxes often conceal truths. Hargreaves, stunned, found no record of Lavinia's child, illegitimate perhaps, raised under another name. A St. Mary Mead, case of a hidden error came to mind. They found a 1757 baptism. Mary Willow, mother unnamed, sponsored by L. Thorne. The Willow Tide to the Whispering Willow pub. At the pub, Mrs. Agnes Baker greeted them. More sleuthing, Miss Marple. Miss Marple asked about the pub's name. Named for the river Willow, Mrs. Baker said. My family, once Willows, ran it since the 1700s. Gran spoke of a smuggler's lass, hidden after scandal. Lavinia's heir. To oversoup, Miss Marple probed. Any keepsakes? Mrs. Baker showed a tin with a 1800 letter about a Lavinia's heir and a modern note. The heir must act. Hoard is yours. Same script as Grayson's threats. Mrs. Baker swore ignorance, but her trembling hands hinted otherwise. Tip. Watch physical cues in denial's nerves betray knowledge. Miss Marple had Polk watch Mrs. Baker at the lockup. Clara knew only of Grayson's local contact. Cavendish muttered of a prize bigger than gold power. Pritchett smirked. The heir's closer than you think. At the riverbank Willow, Miss Marple dug up a rusted tin. Lavinia's portrait. A lock of hair, a deed naming Mary Willow heir to a hidden cache. A guardian protected the claim passed down. This is Baker's family. Over tea with Dolly, Pauck, and Hayes, Miss Marple said. Mrs. Baker's the heir. Manipulated by Grayson's contact to stir fear. Polk noted Mrs. Baker's late night church visits. At the pub that evening, Miss Marple confronted her with the tin. Suspected, Mrs. Baker admitted. Notes urged me to claim the hoard, said the village Otis. Grayson's man threatened my pub. Crash a brick through the window. Note reading, the heir betrays all. Polk chased a cloaked figure, lost in fog. The note carried. Mrs. Baker's lavender scent. Mrs. Baker sobbed. Grayson's men forced me to spread shadow rumors. Miss Marple deduced a deeper player, Grayson's true agent. Reverend found his family tied to the guardian line, protecting Mary. Willow. At midnight, a scream from the church. Hargreaves struck. The chalice stolen. A shadow took it. He gasped. This chapter reveals Mrs. Baker as Lavinia's heir, manipulated by Grayson with Hargreaves' family as guardians. Through sleuthing, confrontations, and tips like checking compartments, the shadow's roots. Clarify. The attack and theft lead to Chapter 9, where a search unmasks the guardian's deadly intent. Chapter 9. The guardian's deadly intent. The dawn after the attack on Reverend Hargreaves cast a pale light over St. Mildred's. The village hushed with unease. Hargreaves, bandaged at Dr. Hayes's clinic, had recounted a cloaked figure striking him with a candlestick, stealing the hoard's silver chalice. The note, the heir betrays all, and Mrs. Baker's revelation as Lavinia. Thorne's heir pointed to a hidden guardian. Miss Marple, sipping tea in Dolly Bantry's kitchen, her knitting idol. Deduced, this guardian isn't just protecting the hoard, they're avenging its disturbance. Dolly, slicing apples, gasped. Jane, they attacked a vicar. What's next? Miss Marple's eyes gleamed. We followed the trail carefully, like threading a needle. She rallied Constable Pauck, Dr. Hayes, and Miss Croft to the vicarage, where Hargreaves shared. The figure muttered of duty and Lavinia's vow. Miss Marple recalled the deed's guardian lineage. Your family protected Mary Willow's claim, Reverend. Anyone overzealous? Hargreaves gasped. My cousin Amos, Hargreaves, retired sexton, gatehouse resident, obsessed with our sacred trust. Tip. Check suspect's routines. Signal intent at Amos's ivy-clad gatehouse, he answered gruffly, fidgeting with a rosary. More meddling? Miss Marple mentioned the chalice theft. City thieves, he snapped, but muddy boots and a scratched hand betrayed him. Tip. Physical evidence dirt, Mark speaks loudly. A search revealed a smuggler's journal behind a bookshelf, detailing the guardian's role to punish interlopers. And Amos's note, the chalice is the key. Only the true heir, he admitted, watching the church, denying violence. In the churchyard, under the willow, the shadow's heart, Pauck dug up a sack. The chalice, a matching dagger, and Amos's note. The guardian strikes. Miss Marple sighed. he's punishing. A St. Mary Mead caretaker, once sabotaged. A mill for tradition. Over lunch ham and pickle she strategized. Amos sees the hoard's disturbance as a curse reborn. Croft found records. Amos's grandfather taught him guardian lore, including bell signals. A stakeout was set. In foggy churchyard, Polk, hid behind gravestones, Hayes and Croft in the vestry, Dolly clutching Miss Marple. At midnight, the bell tolled. Amos, cloaked, carried a sack to the crypt. Polk tackled him, spilling dynamite in the chalice. "You destroy the tunnels?" Polk gasped. Amos shouted. "Lavinia's curse demands it." Hayes restrained him. Croft saved the chalice. Miss Marple reasoned. "Your duty's twisted by anger." Most confessed. Bells notes the attack. On Hargreaves to stop the unveiling. At the station, Amos joined the culprits. Miss Marple explained. Amos, the guardian, acted on warped duty, fueled by Grayson's chaos. Tip. Family lore hides motives. Dig deep. Mrs. Baker pledged the hoard for village good. Hargreaves forgave Amos, but a burn mark on Amos's note, smelling of gunpowder, lingered. "Not dynamite," Miss Marple mused. "Something else." Chapter unmasks Amos as the guardian, tying the shadow to his vendetta. Through stakeouts, confessions, and tips like reading evidence, the mystery nears closure. The burn mark leads to Chapter 10, where a final confrontation reveals an overlooked player. Chapter 10. The shadow's last echo with Amos Hargreaves, exposed as the fanatical guardian and the smuggler's hoard secured for St. Mildred's. Chapter 10 plunges Miss Marple into the final unraveling of the shadow's curse as a puzzling. Burn mark on Amos's note unveils an overlooked conspirator orchestrating a deadly endgame. Will shadow her through a meticulous investigation, heart-pounding discoveries in the village's hidden corners, and a climactic confrontation that binds every thread of betrayal, greed, and ancestral vengeance into a stunning resolution. Packed with vivid scenes, emotional confessions, and practical tips on spotting subtle clues and trusting instincts. This chapter brings the saga to a close, restoring peace to St. Mildred's while leaving a faint whisper of future mysteries. Ensuring the village and Miss Marple's legacy endures. The dawn after. Mose Hargreaves' arrest painted St. Mildred's in a golden haze, the village's rolling hills and thatched roofs glowing as if relieved of a long-held burden. The smugglers, hoard gleaming gold ingots, sparkling rubies, emeralds, and the silver chalice was locked in the vicarage safe, its proceeds earmarked for schoolbooks, farm repairs, and a new church roof. Victor Grayson, Mrs. Pritchett, Lawrence Cavendish, Clara, and Amos crowded the tiny police station, their tangled web of greed and deception unraveled. Yet Miss Marple, seated by Dolly Bantry's crackling fire, her knitting needles still for once fixated on a single detail. The burn mark on Amos's note, reeking of gunpowder, not the dynamite he'd carried, but an older scent like that. Of a flintlock pistol. "One last player lurks," she told Dolly, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "Someone tied to the past, weaving the final thread of this shadow." Dolly, arranging scones on a plate, paled. "Jane, we've caught 5 culprits. Surely that's enough." Miss Marple's blue eyes twinkled behind her spectacles. "The past is a deep well, dear. One more dip may draw up the truth we've missed." The burn mark's oddity gnawed at her. Gunpowder, distinct from dynamite's chemical tang, suggested an antique weapon, a relic of the smuggler's era. She recalled a St. Mary Mead case where a singed letter led to a hidden musket, revealing an arson plot. Practical tip: never dismiss. Small anomalous scents, marks, or textures often point to overlooked tools or motives. Determined to tie the final knot, Miss Marple rallied her trusted allies for one last push. Constable Polk, his uniform crisp, despite sleepless nights, brought official weight. Dr. Edmund Hayes, now fully cooperative, offered analytical precision. Miss Lavinia Croft, her historical knowledge sharper than ever, sought redemption through truth, and Mrs. Agnes Baker, cleared as Lavinia's heir, provided insight into family lore. Reverend Hargreaves, recovering from his attack, joined them at the vicarage, his bandaged head a stark reminder of the stakes. "We must find this final heir from Clara's letter," Miss Marple said, her voice steady. "The burn mark is our guide." They began in Reverend Hargreaves's study, where the hoard's treasures lay under a velvet cloth, the air thick with the scent of old books and wax polish.
Oh.
Miss Marple re-examined Amos's confiscated items. The smuggler's journal, the chalice, the dynamite sticks, and the note with its telltale burn. The journal described a guardian's arsenal, a cache of weapons hidden to protect the hoard from interlopers. Amos used dynamite, but this burn suggests a flintlock, she mused. Croft, flipping through parish records, suggested the church crypt, a smuggler's haven they'd searched before, but perhaps not thoroughly. Smugglers hid stashes in layers, she said. We may have missed a deeper niche. The group descended into the crypt, their lanterns casting flickering shadows on damp stone walls, the air heavy with mold and a faint metallic temps. Behind a cracked tombstone, overlooked in their haste, they found a concealed hollow. Inside, a flintlock pistol, its barrel scorched from recent use, a pouch of black powder, and a scrap of paper in an elegant, unfamiliar script. The shadow's last act guards the air. The cave holds all. The cave by the river, marked on Tom Gray's map. Miss Marple's heart quickened. This script isn't Amos's nor Grayson's syndicate. On the other hand, perhaps the final heir pulling strings. Practical tip: always compare handwriting across clues. Subtle differences in loops or slants reveal separate actors. Back at Dolly's cottage, over a lunch of cold ham, pickles, and crusty bread, she laid out the notes. Grayson's typed threats, Clara's relayed messages, Pritchett's scrawls, Amos's spiky hand. The cave note's flourish matched a signature she'd seen fleetingly at the police station, on a report signed by Tom Gray, Polk's young deputy. Tom, ever present at the unveiling, the stakeout, the crypt searches, had seemed too dutiful, too quiet. Could he, a local, be the final heir? Suspicion mounting, Miss Marple visited the station, where Tom was polishing his badge, his boyish face open but his eyes wary. She mentioned the flintlock casually. Found an old pistol in the crypt. Tom curious, isn't it? His hand froze and he stammered, just ... old junk, miss. But his boots caked with river mud, unlike Polk's polished pair, and a faint gunpowder scent on his jacket betrayed him.
Tip.
Everyday details, mud, smells, habits, reveal secrets when observed closely. She asked Polk to check Tom's background discreetly. Records revealed his family. The Grays were minor smugglers in the 1750s. Allied with Lavinia Thorne, but ostracized after Elias's betrayal. Tom, a second cousin to Mrs. Baker's Willow line, had a claim to heirship, strengthened by family. Tales of a stolen birthright. To confirm, Miss Marple and Dolly stopped at the Whispering Willow pub, its low beams hung with dried hops, the fire casting a warm glow. Mrs. Baker, serving steaming plates of roast chicken and potatoes, confirmed Tom's lineage. His grand told him the Grays were owed the hoard, cheated by the Thorns. He's quiet, but proud, always helping at church, the hall. Too helpful, Miss Marple recalled a St. Mary Mead case where a dutiful gardener was the arsonist. His access, hiding sabotage, she asked. Any keepsakes, Mrs. Baker? Letters mentioning Tom? From a back room, Mrs. Baker produced a family tin containing a 19th century letter. The Grays, kin to Mary Willow, guard her legacy with the church. A modern note tucked inside read, Tom, claim the hoard. At the shadow lives. Its script matched the crypt note. Convinced, Miss Marple searched Tom's room above the station with Polk's permission. Under loose floorboards, a smuggler's map, an X marking a riverside cave, and a letter from Grayson as heir secure the final cache. Use the shadow. Destroy if needed. A test fire from the flintlock, conducted by Hayes, matched the burn mark's residue. Tom's been active, Miss Marple said, planning a final act to claim or bury the hoard. The cave, a smuggler's hideout, held the key. With night falling, fog cloaking the village like a ghostly shawl, Miss Marple devised a trap. She had Mrs. Baker spread word that the hoard would be moved to the church for safekeeping, knowing Tom's post office access would ensure he heard. Polk, Hayes, and Croft staked out the cave, hidden among rocks, while Miss Marple and Dolly watched from the river bank, concealed by the drooping willow. The river gurgled softly, its ripples catching moonlight. At midnight, a cloaked figure Tom slipped into the cave, a sack slung over his shoulder. Poke's whistle pierced the fog. Hayes and Croft blocked the exits. Tom cornered, drew the flintlock, its barrel glinting. "Stay back, the hoard's mine, Lavinia's true heir," his voice trembled with desperation. Miss Marple stepped forward, her shawl blending into the mist, her voice calm but firm. "Tom, you're no killer. You protected this village, but Grayson twisted your pride. Lay down the weapon." His hand shook, eyes darting. "My family's stories," they said. "We were robbed. Grayson promised power if I kept the shadow alive, scares." Notes the attack on Reverend Thomas to stop the hoard's exposure. The burn mark, a warning shot in the crypt to test the pistol. The dynamite, he admitted, was his plan to collapse the cave, hiding a final cache of gold he'd found, ensuring only he could claim it as heir. "I rang the bells, left the notes, struck Thomas. All for Lavinia's vow." Poke approached slowly, hands raised.
Always.
"Tom, it's over." Tears streamed down Tom's face as he dropped the flintlock, collapsing to his knees. Croft retrieved the sack, more gold coins, a sapphire ring, and a smuggler's log confirming the Gray family's role as secondary heirs. Hayes checked Tom. For injuries, none, only shame. Back at the station, Tom joined the others in custody, his confession tying the final threads. Grayson's syndicate had exploited his heritage, making him the Shadow's last echo, a pawn in their broader antiquities scheme. The next morning, the village gathered at the hall. The hoard displayed real, this time, under Poke's watchful eye, Mrs. Baker, as Lavinia's primary heir, pledged the proceeds for community good. A new school wing, farm tools, a restored church bell. Reverend Hargreaves, hobbling but hopeful, spoke of forgiveness. "The shadow was our fear of loss, betrayal, greed." Miss Marple's light dispelled it. Croft, now teaching honest history, vowed to share Lavinia's true story, curse and all. Over a final tea at Dolly's cottage, Miss Marple resumed her knitting, the scarf nearly done. "Human nature weaves complex patterns," she reflected. "Fear fuels shadows, but truth cuts through. Practical tip: trust your instincts. They see what eyes miss, like a faint burn mark leading to truth." Dolly sighed. "Is it really over?" Miss Marple smiled, but her eyes caught a late post, a Scotland Yard telegram warning of syndicate stragglers in nearby towns. "Dear, but shadows linger where greed lives." As she packed to return to St. Mary Mead, the church bell rang clear, a hopeful note. Yet a final clue, a smudged envelope in Tom's belongings, addressed to an unknown L in London, suggested. One thread remained. Miss Marple tucked it away. "Another day," she murmured, stepping into the sunlight, ready for the next mystery. This final chapter unmasks Tom Gray as the last heir. Driven by ancestral pride and Grayson's manipulation, resolving the shadow's curse through a tense trap and heartfelt confessions, through Miss Marple's relentless sleuthing, vivid confrontations, and tips like spotting physical clues and trusting gut feelings, St. Mildred's finds peace. The Yard's warning and smudged envelope hint at future intrigues, closing the saga with a blend of resolution and quiet vigilance, ensuring Miss Marple's legacy endures.